I hope you can all see my screen now. So today's webinar is about donor research and about how to find the right match for a donor. And this is actually a very important topic, something very close to my heart. So I'm really happy that we're going to have this webinar today. A couple of words about Philanthropia and myself. So Philanthropia is a consulting company based in New York, Amsterdam, and we also have an office in Nepal. And I am based in Germany, so we are really an international team with offices around the world. And yeah, Philanthropia aims to support NGOs, organizations of all sizes, to have more impact through fundraising many times, because we believe that being able to find funding, being able to support the work of your organization independently is the key to more sustainable work. My name is Eva, I'm from Germany, and I have lived and worked in Nepal from 2012 to 2019 and have done my PhD research there about sustainability of development cooperation. And since 2012 as well, I work in the field of fundraising, and I've trained thousands and thousands of people online, but also in person about these topics. And yeah, I'm really passionate about them because I feel that if people in the field of grassroots NGOs that actually work with communities have this knowledge, have these skills, then they can achieve even more than they already do with their amazing work, because there are a lot of resources out there. It's just the question of how to connect resources with people. So that's what we're here for. I also always recommend for everybody who's part here who joins us today to connect. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can connect with each other on LinkedIn if that's if you are using that. We also have a Facebook group that is called on proposals for NGOs, the Facebook profile, or other profile that is called the FAQ group. I think there's almost 1,000 people there that also chat about these things and just use it as a means to connect. So I always recommend that participants also do that. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Again, I really like to do that. So we will start and jump right into the topic. This is a picture of the fundraising cycle. So many people that just start fundraising, that start in this area, have the misconception that fundraising is actually like a linear process. That you usually people think, oh, you just write a proposal and you send it to some donors, you get lucky with one donor, you get the money, and that's that. But obviously there's some flaws if you think of fundraising that way, because fundraising is much more of a cycle movement. First of all, it never stops, because obviously when you have a grant and you do your work, then at some point the grant runs out and you need more money. Obviously you have to start over again. So thinking of it as like it starts here and stops there, then you will always run into funding gaps, and you don't want that. But if you think of it as a circle, then you always start over and start over again once you've finished one project or one grant, whatever it might be, and it helps you to avoid funding gaps. But also, if you look at this, you will see that the first stage, number one, is not writing a proposal, but it is finding donors. It's donor research. That's what we're going to talk about today. And the second step, which is called engage, and the third step, which is apply. And to understand that donor research is the very first step and a crucial step, if not the most important step of this process, is key. Because if you start off with a proposal, then you're kind of starting the whole thing backwards, and that is always a problem. So today we will talk about this first part, about research. Just a couple of more words about the cycle. You start with the research part, obviously, because you have to know where to send a proposal to. That's the obvious part. If you don't research any donors, if you don't know who potential donors are, then you don't know where to send your proposal. But finding donors and researching donors does not only mean to find them. Researching them doesn't only mean to find them, but it also means to understand them, to learn about them, to collect intelligence about them, because that's what you will need if you want to write a successful proposal in the end. So you really have to dig deep and unearth all this information about the donors that you have identified. So it's much more than just finding donor names and donor profiles. You really want to understand them thoroughly and understand what they are after, what they're trying to fund, what their priorities are, etc. So this is meant when we talk about research. Then you have the second stage, which is called engaged. Sometimes it's sometimes it's also called donor networking. If you've been following us for a while, you also know that we have courses and resources about networking as well. We've also done a webinar about networking before, and we will do so again in the near future. But this stage means that you talk to donors. Just finding a donor, sending out a proposal, very few times will work. If donors have open calls for proposals, yeah, then sometimes that might be the way, but a lot of funding is negotiated. So a lot of funding doesn't get passed out through those open calls where hundreds and hundreds of NGOs send their proposals, but it is negotiated so that so behind the scenes. So you know somebody, they've worked with you before, etc. They know you have a new project coming up. Okay, yes, we can support you. Or yeah, you meet somebody at a conference, you keep talking to them, you talk about the amazing invention, the amazing app that you have developed that will change agriculture in Nepal, whatever it might be, and then they will come to you and say, oh, this is interesting, can we work together, or something like that. So this engaging part is super important, because you can you can talk to them, introduce yourself, make sure that the donor knows you, that they know what you are all about, how you work, if you align with their way of working, if your mission aligns, if your objectives align, etc. But also make yourself known, so that when they receive proposals, either they ask you for a proposal, which is always the best thing, or when they receive proposals, and they might receive like 10, 20, 100, 200 proposals, they will remember you because they've talked to you before, they understand what you're about, they know your face, etc. So that always helps to kind of stick out of the pile of proposals that they often get. So remember that. After you found a donor, you engage with them. And during this engagement stage, this networking stage, you still collect information, you still research the donor in a way, because you try to understand them better. And this intelligence should then culminate into writing a good proposal, because you have to use all that information that you've gathered in your research process and in your engagement process, and then draft a great proposal that's really a perfect fit for that specific donor, because you use the strategies they want you to use, that you use the activities that they can fund, you work exactly with the stakeholders that they want to work with, etc. Because you know the donor, you've researched them, you understand them, and then you can give them what they need in this third application stage. So yeah, this is important to understand those different stages. We will come back to this picture again and again, because it is so crucial that you really understand that you have to go through all the stages, and don't jump one, because that might be an issue later on. So yeah, again, why do we need donor research? It's basically to understand what the donor wants, because when you write a proposal, you basically put down on paper a description of your project, and you ask the donor to support you to fund that project. So obviously you need to understand very clearly what the donor wants, so that you can write that perfect proposal. Sometimes it can be with whom you work, who are the beneficiaries that you're working with, the stakeholders, what's the geographic location, etc. But also, do your strategies align? Like if the donor you want to work with has the same goal, for example, eradicating world hunger, but the strategy they are following is to introduce genetically changed corn or something like that, and that would be like completely opposed to what you want to do, then that's not a good fit. So even if you have the same goal, and on paper and in the first second you might think, oh, this is a great donor, let's apply there, it wouldn't be a good fit, because they don't follow the same strategies that you would use. So it is crucial that you understand who you're talking to, who you're dealing with, what they want, and how you can contribute to them achieving their goal. Because if you can make that work, and if you can show the potential donor in your proposal that you can help them to achieve their mission, because you have the same mission or a very similar mission, you have the same goals or similar goals, then your proposal will probably be a great success, and it will will be successful and it will be accepted. And you have a much better chance, at least, to be at the top of the pile instead of at the bottom with everybody else. So what are some research methods to find donors? Obviously, in the first stage, to just identify them, because if you start at zero and you have no idea who you want to work with, then you first need to find donors and then to gather more information about them and understand them better. There's a couple of methods that we have used and that we still use when we do donor research. We do prospect research for big INGOs, big organizations, and those methods work. They always work. They have proven successful over the course of decades now. And obviously there's some much more sophisticated, but if you are just starting and you basically want to find, let's say like 50 donors that might be a good fit for your organization, these methods really work and are a great way to start. And the very first one, most simple one, and probably all of you will say, oh yeah, of course, why is she telling us this, is to get organized. And I know this is boring and this is not like a magic tool that will help you, but it is the first step. It's the most simple one, but at the same time, sometimes very complicated, because if you work in a bigger organization, that can be a challenge. Being organized means knowing about what you've done in the past. So that means knowing where you've applied to in the past, because if the person who has worked in your position before you has already done donor research, then it might be interesting to look at those donors again. So it's always good to have like one folder in your organization where you save all proposals, where you save all documents, all donor research documents. If you or anybody else has ever prepared a prospect research table, like a table in Excel where you've collected information about potential donors, should be saved in one spot where everybody can see it and can contribute and can enter it. So maybe somebody who's worked at the organization you work with before has already done stuff, and there would be some interesting matches. So check that out, what has been done in the past, and also who has funded you in the past, because obviously now we're also talking about finding new donors, but don't forget that a donor that has already funded you in the past is much more likely to fund you again, because they know you, they've already decided yes one time, they like you. If you've done good work, if you've written a good report, then they will be more than happy to support you again. It's in marketing, it's the difference between a cold contact and a warm contact. If you contact a completely new donor, that's a cold contact and you have to warm them up first. So you have to introduce yourself, make sure that they know you, and establish some rapport. But if you have already worked with a donor, then it's a warm contact. And in marketing, it's said like to make a customer out of a warm contact is much easier than out of a cold one. And it's the same in fundraising. To get another support, another grant, another donation from a warm contact that has already supported you before is so much easier. But we see that all the time, that organizations don't have that kind of institutional memory, because somebody new starts and they start maybe with a lot of motivation, but they start at zero again and they don't know what their predecessor has done, or what the board has done before, or what has been done like 10 years ago. Those things get lost. So if you want to do like a very simple first step that will be helpful, is just to write down who has funded your organization in the past, in the last 3, 4, 5, maybe even 10 years, and see if those donors would be available to support you again, because they might be, and they might want to see that your organization is growing in a sustainable way. So that's one thing. But then the other thing is also that many organizations have a lot of potential within their organization already that they're not taking advantage of. So in the development field, often people change jobs frequently. They move from one organization to the next. So they bring knowledge with them. So if you just ask, like if at your next team meeting, if you say, I'm starting a new donor research table, so does anybody have any input? Maybe your co-worker, another project manager, will say, yeah, well, I know I just started here working last year, but with this other organization, we received funding from XYZ. That information is extremely valuable because it's already inside information. It's nothing that you search for on the internet, but it comes from someone personally. Obviously, then maybe it can also come with a recommendation, etc. But most organizations I know don't take advantage of those internal sources of information that they already have. So they don't have like a register of past grants, they don't have a register of past donor research, of past corporations, etc. And they're not working with their own staff. They're not taking the full advantage of the people that work for them. Same goes for board members. Often board members are like maybe a little bit wealthy personalities or like work in a different field. They might have a lot of input if you are looking for new supporters. So just ask them, ask the people you work with and share that information, and make sure that you have like one shared folder in your organization where you can get started. And when you start your new donor research table, template, etc., make sure that it is safe there as well, because shared knowledge is always more powerful, because then everybody can contribute. Maybe somebody will log in and see, oh, they are trying to apply with that foundation. Well, I know someone there. And then again, they can add to the table. So that is a simple, but a very, very useful and very effective first step. Because being organized also means being in control, because you know what has happened in the past, you know what's happening now, and with that information, you can plan for the future. Then again, very simple, but I would say one of the most effective techniques to find new donors, to make a list of potential donors, is to check the websites of similar NGOs. So of your competition, if you want to call it that way. Saying competition in the field of development doesn't seem right to me, because I think if everybody works for the same goals, so similar goals, this is not competition. It's like it's a cooperation. And I think the more you think of it that way, the better results you will also have. But just think of organizations that do very similar work to yours, that maybe work in the same country, maybe in the same communities, use similar approaches, etc., and check their websites, check what they share, because most of the times they share a list of donors and supporters on their website, in their annual report, somewhere. Because if a donor funds a project, they want to be seen. They want the NGO, the organization, to share that information, because they obviously, yeah, they want to use it as publicity or whatever it might be, but they want them to share that information. So usually you will find a section that is called supporters or donors or past grants or something like that. Sometimes it's in the footer, sometimes it has like a page where they share the names of supporters that have given them grants, supported or worked with them in the past, especially if they work, for example, with corporations. Most of that's very prominently displayed, because a corporation, when the corporation wants to work with an NGO, obviously they're doing it to also show the public, so they want that to be shared. So if you're looking for corporate partners, this is even better, because they definitely will be on the website. And then you can start researching them. You can pull up a list and see, okay, this donor Foundation X funded projects of an organization that works with children in my neighboring community, and I also work with children in this community. So this donor might be very interested in supporting my project as well, because if their goal is to support education in your country, then why not? It's always worth a go. You might even have like a contact at that neighboring NGO that you could talk to. Maybe they can give you some tips, maybe they can give you some advice, etc. I know this information sometimes amongst development workers is not shared so openly, because they think, oh, they're going to steal our donor, but it usually doesn't work that way. I always would like to think that cooperating, also sharing information, talking to each other is always more useful than keeping things to yourself, because then maybe at some point somebody else will also recommend you, will talk to you, will share information that is going to be very useful for you. So yeah, this way you can find many great names of foundations, of potential supporters that work in the same field or even in the same communities that you do. And sometimes it's foundations that otherwise you would have never found, that you would have never come up with. So I have an example here from, this is actually from the annual report of Save the Children US. this was super easy to find. So I just, now sticking with the example of a children's project, I just typed in savethechildren.us and I came to, or .com, and I came to their website, and at the bottom they had the link to their annual report, and in the annual report I just scrolled to the end, because usually those descriptions are at the end, and then they have the list. It's a perfect list. It gives you already a lot of information that you can then keep working with. So they even have the information about how much funding they got from these organizations, which is great. So you can see some people are just private citizens, so the Bezos family, but you can also see, like, here's a fund, Judith Haskell Brewer Fund, but there's also some foundations, for example, the Davis Family Charitable Foundation, the Good Now Fund, Otto Haas Charitable Trust, the Hearst Foundation. So they gave big gifts, 1 million and above. You also see some people, gave as private citizens. Some gave their inheritance. So after they died, they wrote over their will to an organization, which is something that happens quite often in the US and also in Europe now. Then there's, for example, the Cohen Foundation that gave a grant between 500 and 1 million. And it goes down all the way to smaller amounts under between 50,000 and 100,000. And those are all the active donors that gave huge amounts. So with this, if you work in the same fields that Save the Children does, in the same communities, obviously not every donor here will give to you, but it's a great list to start off with. So you can obviously not the individuals from this list. Don't look up Sandy Beard and try to contact her, because that's probably not how this person is giving money away. But you can look up all the foundations. You can write down all the foundations that you see here and check their website and see if they could be a potential match for you. Maybe they have an open application program. Maybe they're telling you on the website that's going to be the next step. Maybe they're telling you in detail what they're looking for. And then you already have a list of many donors that could be a good fit. And that's the first step. So this is super simple. It took me like 2 minutes to pull up this list. Obviously, you have to see who works in your field. If you work in environmental projects, it's going to be obviously different organizations. It depends on the country you work in, the continent, the approaches that you're using, etc. But you probably know the people or the organizations that work in your field quite well. And you can just, check their websites and see what they share about their supporters. And then see if they have any openings, if there's any way you can network with them, if there's any way that you can get in touch with them. Okay, sorry, I'm just, sometimes I'm getting slower because I'm looking at the chat as well to see if I'm missing anything important. And I see that people are asking for the slides. We will share everything that we will want to share from this presentation afterwards, and we have your email addresses already because you signed up with your email for this webinar. So you will get the information anyway, so you don't have to share your email address again. Obviously, if you want to network with each other, you can do that, but you will get, I think, the presentation and some further information and links via email anyways, and we already have your email addresses. Yeah, so this is the first step where you can get a great list of potential donors without even having to do a lot of work. And then you go the next step and check their website. So here we have an example of the Ford Foundation. If the Ford Foundation is on the list that you just made by checking your competition, you can check their website and see if they have, often you get a very long list in this first step, and then you weed out again quite quickly to see who would actually be a good fit, because sometimes they don't fund in your country, sometimes they don't fund in your area of work, etc. Someone just unmuted, sorry if that's, okay, I hope I caught that. I'm not sure if I got the right one, otherwise please just make sure that you mute yourself, because I don't have my team in the chat, so it's a bit challenging for me. Yeah, so you check their website. Sometimes you can very quickly say, okay, no, this is not a good fit, this doesn't work. So then you just delete them again and move to the next one. But sometimes they have open application lines. So you can just click and then they will tell you exactly what they do want to fund, what they want to see in an application, how you can draft a proposal, etc. So those ones are the promising ones, because if they have a section on their website that talks about how they do fund, then they actively fund. If they don't have any of that information on the website, or maybe even this sentence that every fundraiser hates, which is we do not accept any unsolicited proposals, that doesn't necessarily mean that they never fund, because if you saw them on that list or on that website of your competitor, of your colleagues, you know that they do fund because they did in the past. So they don't never fund, but they just look for ways of connecting with you first. So in those cases, it might make sense to try to connect, to network, to try to understand what they are looking for exactly, to try to understand how you can work with them, how you can partner with them, and how that could work. Okay. So checking the websites of those foundations and also of the foundations, obviously, if you've made a list with donors that have funded you in the past, or donors that somebody else has researched a while ago, or that were in contact with you, that you've met at a conference, etc. Website is always the first place to go. If you're in the US, you can also check the 990. We will actually release a short online course on that very soon. It's called the 990 PF. It's a tax form that US foundations have to release, where you can also find a lot of information about who they fund, how they fund, etc. But in Europe, you don't find that. In Europe, you have to work with what you can find on the website. So here you can find, again, the example from the Ford Foundation. This is the information that would then help you. So there's a grants database. Ford Foundation obviously is big. It's a very big foundation. They have many different funding programs. If you're researching a smaller foundation, often they just have one way of applying with them. Sometimes they open that application window once a year, sometimes twice. Sometimes they have maybe 2 different topics that they are looking for applications on. But the Ford Foundation obviously is huge, so they have different grants. They have many different ways of funding. So they even have a grants database. So here you can search for grants, for kind of grant that you are looking for, and see if there's an opportunity with them. Then they also have this free way of contacting them, of looking if there's any way of working together. It's called idea submission. But many foundations have something similar, where they say, oh, just send us like a very, very small summary of your ideas to see if there's a way of working together. Send us like a preliminary document, just a 1-pager, to see if your idea, if your project, if your work would be a good fit for us. So that's very similar. That's something that many foundations have, and you can usually find the information about that on the website. And then you can also check the team. This is going to be much more important when we really talk about networking. But still, in the research process, you already do that. You check who's on the team. Do they have, like here they even called grant makers, but do they have an entire office, an entire team that just talks about giving grants or making those decisions? And who is there? Do you maybe know them even? Do you have any kind of connection, etc.? So all this information you can usually find on the website. The smaller the foundation, sometimes the simpler the website. So maybe you won't find everything, but usually you will still find a lot. You can even find people who work at the tiniest of foundations. When you look to the imprint section, etc., you find that information. And that again will give you more input on what to put in your proposal, how to approach the next steps, etc. then we have a simple Google search, which again is very basic, but it is very useful and it makes a lot of sense. After you've checked your internal resources, then checked your competition, checked foundation websites. Obviously, when checking foundation websites, sometimes foundations also get contributions from other foundations. They have cooperations. Sometimes foundations also share who they work with as an NGO. So it also works the opposite way. It gives you a lot of information that you can cross-check, obviously. But after that, you can also just type in Google what you're searching for. So what I always do is I used to work in Nepal, and I was always looking for funding for our agroforestry project. So I started like very narrow. I said agroforestry project, grant, Nepal. Stuff came up. Some things came up. So that I could, I could then research those donors further and see if they would be a good fit. And then obviously you go a little bit broader. You can put the geographic focus more broadly. So say Asia instead of just Nepal, or the topic, use agriculture instead of agroforestry, and just see what comes up and what are good fits for what you are looking for. And yeah, play around a little bit with the words. Obviously, you will find many opportunities where the deadline has passed already, but usually you see that quite quickly. And then you just move to the next one. I would always set like a time limit on this, because you can get lost. If you probably know, if you've ever written a research paper or anything like that, you can completely get lost in research when you use Google. You can still find something interesting on page 29 of the Google search. So you should set yourself a limit and say, okay, I'm going to use Google. I'm going to do a Google search for 2-3 hours, and then I'll stop. Doesn't matter how far I got, but just to make sure that you're using your time and your resources effectively. So, but it's going to be useful. It's going to come up with stuff that could be very interesting. So don't dismiss it just because it might be a little bit. You will also find a lot of things that are not a good fit, but you might still find that jewel hidden in those search results. What you can also use Google for is finding email addresses, which is then again very important for the next step. And we talk about networking, because obviously when you prepare these searches, when you prepare, when you search for all these for all this information, you want to collect it, and then you want to connect with those donors. You don't want to just send a proposal. That won't work. You want to connect somehow. So we talked about before how you can see, check the website, who's responsible for giving grants, but sometimes you don't have the email address, you just have a name. So then Google can also help you to find the email address, because usually it is somewhere. Everybody has put down their email address somewhere, on if it's on an attendance list or somewhere to contact, like a forum or somewhere. So you can play around a bit with the name and the ending of the email address that you know, because usually that's always the same. So if you know that a foundation has like the format info@foundation.com, then @foundation.com will always be the same, obviously. So you just have to find out in which format the name is used. And you can use Google to kind of play around a bit and to find out what format for an email address they use, to find out how you can contact them, where else they are a member, to see if there's any connections, etc. So Google is a really useful tool here. And social media is also a great way to find out more about foundations and to understand where they're coming from. This is LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I would say, is one of the most appropriate and best social media networks to use here, because it is aimed at professionals. You know, Facebook, Instagram, etc. That's a lot dealing with with the private life of people. But on LinkedIn, you can really find, like, people present their professional life, what their jobs are, etc. So you can find the right people to connect, and you also know that they will want to connect with you there. Because if you find the grant manager of Ford Foundation on Facebook, they might not want to connect with you on Facebook because they just want to share their holiday pictures there. But on LinkedIn, they will want to connect with you because that is what they use for work. That's probably what they also use in their work hours. So that makes a lot of more sense. So you can find people that work at the foundation through search for a foundation. You can find people just by name, by position, etc. So you can even use the advanced search and then look who works at the Ford Foundation. You can put in names, but you can also look for a location. So if a foundation like the Ford, Ford has different offices in different countries, like one in the US, here in Brazil, but also maybe other countries, then you can put in the country and the people will come up that work there. And those will be the interesting people to connect with and to talk to, so that they can actually help you in your networking, that they can help you with more information about how to write the proposal, how to apply, what kind of funding is available, etc. So use social media to connect with people, to research. You can see what they share. So you could probably also see a little bit, if you follow the Ford Foundation as well, you see what kind of information they share, what they want to know, and what they want to see in partners, etc. A lot of this information is shared on social media. Then there are also other resources that you can use for donor research and also donor networking, because as you see, those two are very closely connected. There are some databases that you can use to do donor research. So we actually offer one which might be very interesting for you. It's called donordatabase.org. And there's a 1-week free trial. We have like thousands of foundations in there. So you just type in the country, you type in area of work, and foundation names come up that you can then again, obviously you have to research them further. You can't just take the information as it is from the database. You have to research further and see if they still have an open program, etc. But it is a good way. And there's other, like DevEx does the same. The foundation directory online does the same, but they're very expensive. There's a couple of free ones that just show a couple of names of foundations or potential partners. So there are those kinds of databases out there. And if you have some budget, it might make sense to invest in this a little bit, because you will spend time anyway. So sometimes we are hesitant to pay for a tool, but then if we think, if you researched by yourself, it will take you maybe 2-3 days. So that is valuable time as well. And if you pay like $100 a year, which is our subscription, I think, it might save you so much time that it's worth it in the end. So you kind of have to see how much budget you have available, how much time you have available, how much you want to spend. I know DevEx is much more expensive. I think you're talking about like $300 a month or something, but I'm not 100% sure about how much they are, but they are very helpful. That's for sure. Then if you want to get to know, like if you want to understand who you want to meet, you can also check like attendance lists of conferences, etc., where you know that your topics have been discussed. You can check the Charity Commission pages and groups on LinkedIn as well, social media, because people network, especially on LinkedIn. There are some very good professional groups of fundraisers where a lot of information is shared, where people network, where you can find out about new opportunities, and where you can actually connect and talk to the people that are developing grant programs. I just saw recently a very interesting idea where the foundation had this on the website said, if you have an idea that's interesting for us, please join our LinkedIn group and discuss with us. So then you join a LinkedIn group, then you're connected with many other people that work in the same field, and you propose your idea, what you want to do as a project in that LinkedIn group, and then others can comment and say, oh, this is a great idea, or we've done something similar. You immediately start networking with other people, and the foundation also gives feedback and says, yeah, this sounds like a good fit, please send us an email. Or they say, oh, this sounds interesting, but it's not quite what we do, so maybe look here or there. So this is done more frequently now. So using social media proactively, especially LinkedIn, makes a lot of sense in my mind. So all of this, the entire cycle that we were talking about, should be based on a strategy, obviously, because if you just do things for the sake of doing them, it doesn't make any sense. You need to know how much money you need. You need to know your the prospects of what's going to happen, etc. So you need a strategy. Strategy means planning. And why should you do that? Also, why should you connect your donor research to a strategy and to this long-term planning? Well, one thing is that it's important to prioritize. As I said before, in research, you can just simply get lost. You can research forever. And so you have to set yourself a limit. You have to set some priorities. Maybe you need to fundraise, maybe you need money for a specific project, short term, so then you can prioritize that, and that will be clarified in your planning document. Maybe you need a lot of funding for a building, but that's going to be long term, so then you will approach different donors, etc. You need to kind of know all of this to direct your donor research in the right direction. And then obviously you also have to plan who will meet you, when and where. Now in times of Corona, it's on the one hand it's more difficult, on the other easier, because obviously in person is difficult, but a lot of stuff happens over Zoom, like this webinar today. It's become much more accepted now as means of communication. So organizing meetings with donors that you have identified through your research, talk with them about how they would like to work with you or how you could work with them, needs to be included in your strategy long-term planning, because all of that stuff takes time. And to be able to do it successfully, you need to give it the space that it needs. When you introduce yourself and reach out for the very first time, when you want to contact a new donor, that's a cold email. Like we said before, the difference between warm contact and cold contact, this would be a cold one. So you need to be very careful that you get through, because as you know, everybody gets hundreds of emails every day now. So it's very important that your email is different, that your email actually gets through to people and that it gets read and answered. So in the introductory email, it makes a lot of sense to say who referred you. So how did you find the person that you are writing to? Ideally by like a personal reference. If you know somebody who's introduced you, if one of your co-workers has worked with them before, if they have worked with your foundation, with your organization before, something like that. So just say where you come from, why you're contacting them, how you found them, what's your connection. Then you introduce yourself quickly, who you are and what you want to learn. So it's very important that in that first email, you don't ask for money, you don't ask them to do something for you, but you look for ways that you can actually partner up, maybe even something that you can do for that potential donor that would be beneficial for both sides, or maybe even for them, or something you want to learn, something you didn't understand about their process, a question that you have about their projects, their program, etc. Something that is possible, so that is achievable, that can be done, but it needs to be disconnected from the money thing, because if you, in your very first email you ask for money, it won't work. Then you need a call to action with a date if possible. So think carefully about what you want to ask for in that email, because if it's something too big, again, never ask for money in the very first emails if not under very specific circumstances. Ask for a meeting, ask for a call, but again, circumstance. No, if you are based in Kenya and you're writing someone in New York, then don't ask for a meeting, because they wouldn't come like just to meet you all that way. But if you work in Kathmandu and the NGO or the INGO that you're contacting, or the foundation has an office in Kathmandu, well, then a meeting is possible because it's easy. But you could ask for a phone call, you could ask for a Zoom meeting, you could ask, if they are in the same country, for an in-person meeting, something like that, something that actually works, that you can put a deadline on, that is easy for the donor to do, and that is specific. So I've seen many cold emails that are great, but then in the end they say, oh, we would like to work with you, or maybe we can cooperate. That's not specific. that is very easy to not react to, because what does that mean? And the donor, the person who reads it, in that case, the donor has to think of what you might mean with that. What kind of cooperation? How could we work together? I don't know. They don't want to do that. You want to make it easy on them. So you want to be very specific so that they can say yes or no to whatever you're asking for. And if you look at our networking course, I will share a little bit of information about our courses later. You see that we have samples of those emails that actually work, that came through, that you can also use to craft your own cold emails if you're interested. And then when you meet, just some quick words. Don't talk too much about yourself. That's a very classical mistake as well. Ask more, because you're still in the donor research process. Even when you meet with someone, you want to learn about what they want. You want to ask them questions. You want to ask what kind of funding they give, what kind of projects they want to support, what stakeholders you should work with, etc. Ask them, and all of that information is valuable and should be added to your donor research table, to your prospect table, so that whoever writes the proposal, if it's you or somebody else, or like if you give on that, pass on that information, knows what you have learned in that conversation. And then the second step, you can talk about what you can offer the donor to help. And help in that sense means to help them achieve their mission, because they are also working. You probably, with your NGO, you have a theory of change, you have a mission that of what you want to achieve. And the donors have the same thing. And a good donor fit is a donor that has the same mission, because then you can help them to achieve their mission. You can actually do something for them. And it becomes more of a partnership and not like a relationship between someone who gives money and someone who receives money, but a partnership of two partners who want to achieve the same thing. And one partner has to offer like experience and a project, and the other partner has to offer money. So it's still a partnership. So that is the second step when you meet with donors, to find a way or to understand what you can offer them, and then offer it to them. And then comes the third stage of the process, which is funding, asking for funding. So this is when you send a proposal, when they ask you for it. This is when you send a concept note, a letter of interest. This is when you send like a write-up of your project, etc. But all of these, the stuff that we talked about before, is like the build up, is like building the relation, understanding the people that you want to talk to, understanding a donor, finding a donor in the first place. It's a lot of preparation. And then writing the proposal. Obviously, the proposal has to be perfectly fitted for all the information that you found. It doesn't make sense to research a donor, talk to them, understand them very thoroughly, and then not use that information in the proposal, obviously. So you still have to take that information that you collected and use it in your proposal. And then you have a much better chance of being successful. If we stay with the example of Ford Foundation, a couple of years ago, they said that they received 40,000 proposals per year. So you have to imagine, if you want to be chosen out of that huge amount of proposals, your proposal has to be the perfect fit. And for it to be the perfect fit, the donor has to be the perfect fit, and you have to perfectly understand the donor to be able to craft that perfect fit proposal. And then you can be successful in fundraising. Obviously, not every donor has that amount of applications. Ford is huge. Everybody knows Ford, so everybody applies there. There are other donors that will receive much smaller amounts of proposals, but still, the better your proposal is a fit for them, the easier it is to get picked and to get chosen. Yeah, and that is in the end what leads to success and failure. Obviously, sometimes there are other reasons. Sometimes it's not the quality of your proposal why you get rejected. Sometimes they don't have enough money. Sometimes there's political changes that that you have no influence on, etc. There might be like other reasons, but oftentimes the main reason for failure in fundraising and proposal writing is that people do not do enough research. They do not understand the donors at the basic level. They send proposals and it's not a match, it doesn't work, so they get rejected. So if you do all the steps that we've talked about today, thoroughly researching, understanding, finding a good fit, connecting with them before you send anything, then you are many, many steps ahead of many other NGOs that jump those stages and just don't do it. yeah, and with that, we complete the fundraising cycle. We found a good donor, we understood them, we researched them thoroughly, we engaged with them, learned even more about them, wrote the perfect application and got the money. But you'll see this arrow, it goes back to finding donors again. So whatever you learn in this process, you should also try to write it down as a lesson learned, share it with your peers, use it again for the next round of the fundraising cycle, because you're going to research again, you're going to engage again, you're going to apply again. So whatever lessons you learn along the way, for example, maybe you will find out that a specific kind of donor just doesn't work for you, that a specific partner didn't work for you, etc. So if you find those things out, write them down, try to learn from them and take those lessons so you can even become even better in the next cycle that you run through. I've mentioned this a couple of times before, and you probably also know that if you've been following us for a while. We do offer online courses. We do these free webinars. We have a couple of free courses as well, but we do offer paid online courses as well that are much more thorough than the webinars and the free courses, obviously, with templates and lists and everything that can help you to be more successful. And this course today was mostly about research, but a bit about networking as well. So we would like to offer you today as a special offer, a combination, that's 2 courses actually, combination of the research course and the eligibility course, because eligibility means to really find out if you're a good fit. It comes with a checklist that you can go through the points that really tell you if this donor is a good fit for you, if you can work with them, etc. The research course comes with a template for a donor research prospect table. It's an Excel file that explains exactly how you can fill it out, how you can find those donors, etc. So these 2 courses are, for me, a perfect fit if you do want to learn more about how you can find donors, how you can organize your donor research, how you find out if they are that perfect fit, and how you gather the information that you need. And yeah, because today we want to make you a special offer, the price is actually 50% off. So instead of $100, it's only $50 today. And I will put the link in the chat in a second if you're interested in that. And the links will also come in that email. Here you can see a couple of other courses that we offer. For example, fundraising from US foundations, writing a project plan, or how to raise funds from European foundations, but we have more specific ones as well about the log frame or funding from USAID, etc. So yeah, I recommend you check those out as well on philanthropia.org, and with the coupon code PFN users, you can also get 30% off of all the courses that you find there. But the 50% offer is only valid on that combination course that I talked about. But if you have any questions about any of the other courses or resources, etc., please feel free to get in touch at info@philanthropia.org and let us know, and we will get back to you as quickly as possible. Okay, so we still have some time for questions, I think. I would hope. I'm just going to share the link very quickly if you're interested. So this is what I just posted without any description. Well, that's not smart, but I hope you can find it. It's the link for the course that I was talking about that you can get at 50% off. So let's see if I find questions, because I see that you put many, many comments. Yeah, so Naveen said that it was useful, the part about when you meet. Yes, we do. Again, we do offer a course just on networking where we go into much more detail, and we actually have like a small role play where we play out a meeting to see if to see how to go about that. Oh, and by the way, because I saw that there are a couple of people from Nepal joined us today, Actually, we will do live training again in Nepal in April. I will be traveling to Nepal and do 3 days of training. And in that training, we also practice and train these conversations, because it is extremely important to learn how to listen and to understand. So if you're interested in that training in April in Nepal, in Kathmandu, then please send us an email, and the team will be more than happy to get back to you and send you all the information if you are from Nepal and in Kathmandu in April. Just to drop that here. There's a question, do either of these courses provide information about funding sources? Well, they do provide information about how to find funding sources, but obviously it's not a list of funding sources, because we don't know what, this would be very specific. If you work like with children, the list would be completely different to if you work with the environment. So there's no list of funders, but we very specifically walk you through the process of finding those donors and how you can find those funding sources, exactly where you can find it. We also explain much more in detail how you can use the databases that make it very easy. We give you like a template to fill out. So we always say in the end, after the course, our students walk away with like a list of 20 funding sources that they know that they can contact in the future. So it doesn't give you the names, obviously, but it gives you all the tools to quickly find the names and to quickly find good fits.
Question,
sorry?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, I saw someone asked in the chat how the young organizations or community-based organizations would also be able to get funding. For example, they have never done any, they have the ideas, but they've never received any funding or never done any activities. And number two, so how do they get the funding now that they're a young organization who are not yet established? And number two, does it mean that a starting up NGO or organization or a CBO has to start off with their own funds? Because, for example, on my case, I've really struggled to establish my organization because nobody really wants to work with someone who is not yet established. So sometimes I would dig deep in my pocket and ensure some activities are running. I would write proposals on my own, and just to see that, because you have the idea, you have the passion for your community, and so you feel like you really want to run the course. So does it mean there comes a point where you really have to dig into your pocket and just to establish? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So for the first part, it is a huge challenge. We know that for grassroots NGOs and small NGOs to actually get funding in the beginning, because many donors, as you said, just want to work with foundations or with NGOs that are already established, that have some history, that can show that they've worked with grants before, etc. We do actually have an online course that focuses only on that, how to get funding when your NGO is brand new, because there are some ways. So what we always recommend is to look for partnerships. Sometimes that makes sense. So if you find another NGO that has been there for a couple of years and you enter a partnership with them, then they can apply in their name, but you would still be able to do the work and collect some experience. Obviously, for that, you always need great contracts and agreements, because partnerships, as you probably all know, can go south as well. So if you want to enter a partnership with another NGO, with another organization, you need to be super clear on what you expect from that partnership, what they expect, financials, etc. But it can be a very good way of starting if you have no experience yet. On proposals4ngos.com, that's our other website that we run, you will also find many articles on how to draft a partnership agreement and all of that information. I saw another question about that. So maybe you could just go check out proposals4ngos.com and type in the search box as like partnership. You will find a couple of articles and resources about how to enter a partnership, etc. That's one way you can go. Another way is small grants. We are working on a course in about that as well. And we have a lot of information on the website as well. Because small grants usually means under 10,000 US dollars, often are also paid out to new NGOs. Often a good source for that is embassies. If you, depending on which country you work in, if you check the embassy, I know that the German embassy, every German embassy, wherever in the world you go, has a small budget, not much. Sometimes you can get like a grant of 1,000 only, of 3,000, but often that's already something to start, no? They have a small budget to spend in country. I know the US embassy has the same, the Swedish embassy used to have the same, Denmark as well. So check those small grant programs. Sometimes it has different names, but just check the websites of the big embassies in your country. Often they have those programs, and that's sometimes a good start because they do want to work with grassroots NGOs. There are other foundations that give small grants, particularly to NGOs that just start. So that's always a good first step. And then with that grant, you can collect some experience and use that experience then to apply to the next place. But yeah, often if you start an initiative by yourself, it often also means like a personal investment in the beginning, because especially when you try to get established, and by established, I also mean like the legal part to just register, there's very little funding for that. Sometimes you can find in your country some initiatives that want to support civil society, it's called then, stuff like that. So yeah, if you find that, you can dig into that a bit and see if they work with new initiatives. But it is a challenge, I know that. And I think it's one of the shortcomings of the field, because in my opinion, most of the time, the small NGOs have often the best ideas because they're closest to the people that actually need support. So it makes a lot of sense to support them. But unfortunately, many times foundations don't want to do that. But yeah, a very first step is always, I think, to look for partners that you could apply with, or just look for small grants, because that's also something that foundations give out to really new NGOs. So just check, I think I can take one or two more questions. Just trying to get through the, yeah, so I think some of you joined now. I'm sorry, I think there was a mistake in the email because it went out, like when the email that reminded you that we're starting in 1 hour went out when we started. So that was a mistake on our side. I'm very sorry for that. We will share the presentation either today or tomorrow, and then you can rewatch it. And if you have any questions, if there's anything's not clear, then please reach out and just let us know, and we will make sure that you get the information. There's a question. Sometimes you do research on donors and you find that donors are only accepting proposals on invitation. So there's no unsolicited proposals stuff. How does an organization get to be invited to submit a proposal? Yeah, often it is through this networking process. So if I find a foundation that is a perfect fit for the project that I want to fund, but it says that on the website, what I would do is, I think I would, first look at the people who work there and see if I have any kind of connection to them. Like maybe there's a grant officer and we went to the same university, or we went to the same course, or we are in the same LinkedIn groups, something like that. Obviously, if it's the same country, it's much easier. Sometimes it's difficult to find a connection, but oftentimes you will find some kind of connection. Sometimes you were at the same conference. Even if it's 5 years ago, it doesn't matter. You don't have to personally know them. And then I would just contact them, send an email and say, hi, I don't know if you remember me, but we've met at this conference XYZ 3 years ago. Your presentation was very interesting. I have a question, blah, like that. And then you can hopefully start a conversation. And this way, maybe you can get an invitation at some point, because then maybe if you can get a connection, if you start talking with people, obviously with the goal of getting funding, you might get the opportunity to present your work, to present your organization, and to get this kind of invitation at some point. So connecting, trying to get onto their radar, and sometimes it will not result in a grant, but support you might need is not always only money. No, it can be different things. It can be just good advice, or it could be that they recommend you, or something like that. And the same obviously goes for foundations that you've worked with. If you see that a foundation that you found that says no unsolicited proposals is somehow connected with someone that you've already worked with, you can always ask for a recommendation and tell your current donor, well, we found this new donor, we want to work with them, could you maybe talk to them? Do you have any connection like that? Develop your network actively, and then oftentimes you will find connections and you will find ways in. Obviously that doesn't work always. I wouldn't even say it works half the time, but that is fundraising is networking. Fundraising is developing these connections with other people. Oftentimes they don't result in anything, but then at some point you might get lucky and you will get the big reward at the end. So it's not like a super clear way that you can say, do this and that, and then you will get money. But always try to find ways to connect with them, to then be in a position to personally explain to them why you would be a good fit, how you could help them achieve their mission, how you can be a good partner for them. And then you might get that invite, or you might get that solicitation that you are looking for.
Another question, says Eva.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Eunice Anyango from Kenya.
Mm-hmm.
So another question is it advisable to post your proposal? Probably you have a website, or you have your blog post where you post your reports, you post the different activities you do. So do you advise us to post our proposals? For instance, if you have a section in your website for Fund Us, would you put in your proposals in there?
I wouldn't put the proposals in there. I would just, because with texts anywhere, it's super important to keep in mind the audience, no? And I don't think any donor actively goes out and looks for proposals online. So the audience that you have there is just people who want to learn something interesting, want to maybe be entertained, or however you want to call it. So obviously, yes, I would put the projects there and the description, but much more fun than a proposal, because a proposal can be very dry and you don't want to put all that technical information up there. But you can, yeah, describe your project, obviously, that's very useful, and maybe use case studies, use pictures, whatever you have to explain to a potential donor what your work will be and what your work looks like. That makes a lot of sense. But not like the full proposal document, because I like proposal writing, I like proposals, but I don't think that they are usually an interesting book to read. Usually they are more or less boring, because you kind of have to cover some facts. Obviously you want to make them interesting, but it's not always possible because there's a lot of technical details. So I wouldn't put the full proposals up there, but yes, like maybe a summary with a case study and a nice picture, something like that, so that when people find you and are interested and see some options, that they know what they are working with.
Another question. It's Eunice again. Sorry, this is the last one.
Okay.
And how about getting very creative and innovative ideas? Because today donors really want to find very innovative ideas, very creative, very people-centered or community-centered ideas. So how would you advise us to ensure we come up with such kind of ideas that are donor relevant?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's true that wherever you go, you always see that they request innovative solutions, innovative projects, etc. But oftentimes they're not really looking for like something completely new. Oftentimes they want like a mix, like new elements, yes, but also things that are tested and tried, because you kind of have to show that it's successful as well. So you don't have to invent the wheel completely new every time. But obviously, if you work with communities, you will have new approaches and new ways of looking at things, and sharing that, and yeah, making it known to the donors that you know what is happening in the communities, what they need, what they ask for, etc., is a great thing. Often you can also see, obviously, what kinds of projects the donor fund. If you look at past projects, they also share that on their website. So if they say, oh, we're looking for innovative projects, but the last 10 projects they funded were just like app development, obviously you can say, yes, app development is very innovative, but on the other hand, is it? Because we've been doing that for a while. So sometimes innovation doesn't always really mean innovation. Sometimes it just means like some technical aspect that hasn't been looked at before, or sometimes it's about the way you frame it, etc. So I would always recommend, obviously before you write a proposal anyways, that you just check what kind of projects have they been funding in the past, because sometimes that gives the clearer picture than just the description of what they're looking for. Because sometimes you see, like, you look at a foundation, you think, oh, this must be an amazing fit, and you see a description that like says, oh, we fund schools everywhere, we build schools that are so modern, I don't know what. And then you look at the project and you see, oh, okay, they paid 3 computers for 1 school. So it makes a lot of sense to look at the projects that they actually did in the past, and that gives you an idea of the kind of innovation that they want to fund. And how much you have to focus on that. Obviously, if you approach a donor like I don't know, Google, or like the Silicon Valley companies, they might have like a different outlook on that. But if you work with very traditional donors, oftentimes they are not looking for real like innovation like you would see in a tech company, but they are looking for innovative approaches that are based on something that has been successful in the past. Okay, yeah, thank you very much for this amazing webinar, and for so many questions. I know that I didn't get to all of them, but unfortunately with so many people, so many questions, I can't go through all of them, but I recommend, I've seen a couple of questions about other courses. So we do have a course on proposal writing, for example. We do also have some other free courses that you can check on proposals4ngos.com. That's our other address. We have many free samples, free templates, and articles, long articles about the different aspects of proposal writing and the fundraising process that I recommend you check out and go see. And yeah, if you want to learn more about donor research and networking and finding out how to find this perfect fit, then I really recommend that course. I will put the link in again just to make sure that you all of you saw that. It's at 50% off until Monday, I think we said. I'm not 100% sure about that, but you will get the email as well. But if you think about getting it, I recommend snatching it up, because it's a really good deal, and you'll learn much more about this topic than I was able to share today. Thank you very much. I hope you have a good day, a good weekend ahead very soon. And yeah, I hope to see you in one of our other webinars very soon again, and that we will have such a nice conversation again. Thank you, and bye-bye.